that CUSMA has provided much needed shield to the Canadian economy in the face of tariffs. It exempts nearly 90% of Canada's exports to the U.S. from Trump's levies. So what options does Ottawa have now? For more on this, we've reached Aaron O'Toole in Toronto. He's a former leader of the Conservative Party of Canada and a member of the Advisory Committee on Canada-U.S. Economic Relations. He's also president and managing director at Addit North America Risk Management Firm. Hello, Aaron. Thank you for making time for us.
Good to be back with you, Arthi.
So let's talk about how Canada now, does it pivot its strategy? Does it shift its strategy? What happens from here?
I think the strategy stays the same. It would have been nice had the U.S. agreed to lock in CUSMA for 16 years, but no one really believed that that was going to happen. The president is quite unpredictable when it comes to even confirming his previous deal. CUSMA is his creation. He said great things about it in the first administration, but we didn't think that was going to happen. Now we may have to justify renewal every year. But for the Canadian negotiating team, addressing the 232 tariffs that are outside of the CUSMA agreement on steel, on auto, on aluminum, that's a key consideration. And I think our work will continue to try and drive home the fact that a fair deal with Canada actually helps make things more affordable in the U.S., gives them energy security, helps them build advanced manufacturing. So we're stronger together will be the message.
You know, we were listening in, of course, there to the federal minister responsible for the trade with the U.S., Dom LeBlanc, and he said that there is an opening here for particular paths with bilateral talks, or if there's protocols or side deals or what have you. I mean, how beneficial is that to Canada going forward?
Well, we have to recognize that we are the smaller partner in this. So if the U.S. wants to have some side deals or only wants to renew CUSMA every year and not for 16 years, we will really have to go with the flow. But what I think we're doing better this time than in the first Trump administration is we're making the case for Canada a lot better. We're meeting our NATO 2% target, something we weren't doing in the past, and the U.S. have complained about going back to President Obama. In fact, we're doing more in the Arctic, and the Prime Minister has really set that as a priority agenda. And we're building pipelines again. So the U.S. want to rely on Canadian energy and critical minerals. So if we can build into this new bilateral agreement an ability for Canada to make up the gap for the U.S. on rare earths or critical minerals and critical metals like aluminum, I think we're making our case a lot better. And it may be a couple of deals. It may be taking advantage of the president when he wants to make a deal. I think the team is being very flexible, realizing that it will all come down to President Trump. Even the U.S. trade representative probably doesn't know what the president thinks week to week.
You know, to that end, you just mentioned that Canada really has to go with the flow here because they are not the biggest player in this particular deal between these three countries. So I'm wondering, does that mean that, you know, Canada's leverage perhaps isn't as powerful as sometimes people make it out to be? Or does that also mean that perhaps Canada is in this incredibly vulnerable position where there is a chance for more concessions to be made? And as we know, the outcome is kind of up in the air when we do that.
Canada does have leverage, Arthi, and this is something that is bipartisan. You know, in fact, Pierre Poilievre, my successor, has raised the leverage piece quite a bit. And I know Prime Minister Carney's moves on Bill C-5 and pipeline work is trying to leverage our oil and gas strength. The U.S. refineries like to use and need to use Canadian oil, for example. All of the shale gas revolution in the United States, which made them an energy exporter rather than an energy importer for decades, that is starting to peak out. So in the next 10 to 15 years, the U.S. will need gas, and that gas can come from Canada. So there are leverage points. Uranium in Saskatchewan, the U.S. president has just signed a big commitment to nuclear reactors. They will need that uranium. So as I said, I think we're making our case better. And the fact that the Carney government is much more open to resource development and defense spending than the Trudeau government was gives us better cards to play at this critical geopolitical time.
You know, finally, I wanted to ask you, in the statement from Jameson Greer, he said that the United States will meet with Mexico the week of July 20th, and it's the third round of bilateral negotiations. No mention there about upcoming talks with Canada. How do you read that?
I read that as the U.S. chose to go bilaterally with Mexico first. And Arthi, the reports of those bilateral talks are not great ones. So I don't think there's any advantage to to Canada being there first. As you said off the top, most of our economy, almost 90%, is covered by CUSMA. It's really the non-CUSMA tariffs, the steel, aluminum, autos, that we're really pushing the Americans on. And I think at the end of the day, they will do this with Mexico. They did this the last time as well. And Canada just has to address issues that come up, whether it's forced labor, whether it's the fentanyl issue. Some of them we don't think are justifiable, but we're quickly responding to what they're asking us to step up on. And we're making our case for a deal on defense, on energy, as I said, better. And when the president is ready to deal, I think the prime minister has maintained a bit of a relationship with him that will be more professional than in the past, and we'll strike when the iron's hot. But the iron might not get hot until the fall.
Okay, good to know. Thank you for this, Aaron. We appreciate your time as always.
Thank you.
That is Aaron O'Toole. He is the former leader of the Conservative Party of Canada and a member of the Advisory Committee on Canada-U.S. Economic Relations.